The vanishing presence. When you retreat from the chaos of others' needs, something mysterious happens. People begin to notice your absence more than they ever valued your presence. Carl Jung understood this psychological paradox deeply. The moment an individual pulls back their energy, they disturb the unconscious contracts built on availability. You were once the silent pillar in their storm, the one they assume would always be reachable. But when your energy vanishes from their immediate grasp, their expectations crumble. The mind, conditioned by attachment, begins to fear, not your distance, but the silence it brings. A silence that echoes with questions: why did they pull away? What did I do wrong? And more subtly, who were they when not shaped by my presence? In truth, you become a mirror. By not being available, you reveal who was dependent on your energy to feel whole. The weight of unspoken expectations. There is a quiet pressure that builds over time, not from what people say, but from what they expect without words. The more available you are, the more invisible your sacrifices become. They begin to assume your time is endless, your energy renewable, your soul uncheckable. But Carl Jung warned us, the unconscious mind doesn't differentiate between kindness and weakness until distance forces reflection. When you begin to withhold what once was freely given your attention, your empathy, your listening ear, the shift feels violent to those who are comforted by your presence. Not because you've changed, but because their illusion of who you are has been shattered. The truth is, you were never meant to carry everyone. And by stepping back, you allow others to confront the hollowness they were too afraid to see. This withdrawal isn't cruelty, it's clarity. The mirror they refuse to face your absence does not merely leave a void, it becomes a mirror that forces others to confront their own emptiness, their dependence on your strength, your validation, your silence. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that is what your unavailability triggers. Not resentment, but fear. Fear of self-reflection, because when you stop absorbing their chaos, they must face it alone. When you no longer serve as the emotional sponge, their unhealed wounds start echoing in the space you once filled, and so they will label you cold, arrogant, distant. But in reality, you've simply chosen yourself over the comfort of being consumed. You become the disruption in their narrative, the symbol of what they refuse to become self-aware. The silence that screams. There is a silence more deafening than rage. It is the silence of withdrawal, not in defeat, but in revelation. When you stop being available, you remove the emotional noise that once dulled their perception. Suddenly, your absence speaks louder than all your explanations ever could. And what it says is everything they never wanted to hear. Carl Jung believed that silence was the great revealer. He wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But when you go silent, they are left to face themselves without your voice as a distraction. They hear the hollowness behind their justifications, the cracks in their confidence, the truth in their pretense. And that's when the shift begins. They don't miss you, they miss the version of themselves they could pretend to be in your presence, because your silence becomes a psychological mirror. And mirrors, Jung said, are always brutal and unfiltered. The power of sacred boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, they are gates to protect what is sacred. And when you stop being endlessly available, you begin to sanctify your own time, energy, and presence. Carl Jung understood that the psyche is not infinite. It needs containment. He wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. To pass through that inferno, one must not be constantly distracted by others' demands. You begin to realize that being available to everyone is a slow erasure of the self. You become the emotional sponge for others' chaos until one day you forget the texture of your own soul. But when you step back, when you assert, 'This is where I end and the world begins,' something astonishing happens. People who once treated your time casually begin to see it as precious, and those who disappear and you draw the line were only ever standing close to cross it. This is the secret Jung hinted at. True individuation begins not with connection, but with separation. The mind becomes sharper, the spirit stronger, and your life yours again. Solitude is the great teacher. In the silence of solitude, something ancient wakes up. Carl Jung believed that man must confront the depths of his own unconscious to find wholeness. But this confrontation does not happen in the noise of the world. It happens in silence, when no one is watching, when no one is asking for your attention. When you stop being available, you enter the temple of your own mind, and inside you meet not just your thoughts but your shadows. At first, it's unsettling. The silence speaks too loudly. The mind stirs with unresolved memories, regrets, forgotten ambitions, and ancient grief. But if you stay, if you endure, the silence becomes music. Solitude becomes a teacher. It teaches you that your worth is not measured by how many messages you respond to, how many people praise you, or how often you are seen. It teaches you that clarity is born not in activity, but in stillness. And that your soul has always been waiting for your undivided attention. Jung called this process individuation, a sacred reuniting with the self. When you are no longer constantly available to the world, you become available to something higher, the truth of who you really are. The energy you withdraw becomes power you reclaim. There is a sacred energy within you constantly leaking into the world through attention, emotion, and obligation. Carl Jung warned that when we extend ourselves too much, especially to please others or to avoid discomfort, we disconnect from the self, and what is lost in that disconnection? Vitality, focus, inner authority. But when you stop being available, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity, that leaking energy returns to you. Suddenly, your mind feels sharper. Your emotions feel more stable. Your inner voice, once a whisper beneath the noise, begins to roar. This is not selfishness. This is psychological rebalancing. The same people who once expected constant access to your mind, your time, your empathy, now stand confused by your silence. But in that silence, you're becoming sovereign. You're building a fortress around your consciousness, not to keep the world out, but to keep your soul intact. Every no you say to others becomes a yes to your own evolution. And the more unavailable you become to superficial demands, the more powerful, magnetic, and terrifying your presence becomes. Not because you're aggressive, but because you are fully present and completely uncheckable. Silence is the weapon of the inner warrior. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your absence, you begin to tap into a deeper, more ancient kind of power. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens, and the warrior who looks within knows the weight of silence, There is a type of silence that doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't apologize. It simply is. This is the silence of the inner warrior, the one who has seen chaos, betrayal, and emptiness, and chosen stillness over noise. You see, the world demands noise from you, explanations, justifications, performances, but when you deny them this noise, when you cloak yourself in intentional distance, you terrify the system that once fed on your availability. You become unpredictable, you become unreadable, you become untouchable, and in that space your mind becomes a blade sharpened by solitude, tempered by self-awareness, and held steady by purpose. This is not silence born from weakness. This is silence forged in fire, the silence of someone who knows exactly who they are and no longer needs the world's permission to be it.